Hey everybody, this is Brian here. I hope you're all having a very good holidays. This is going to be the first video I've made in about a week here, which is going to be my top 10 songs, actually my top 10 musicians, rather, for your mood. This is after I realized that almost all of my favorite artists personally were kind of depressing. So with that in mind, I thought of some consistently happier artists that I could put together on a list for you guys. Also included is several reasons why each was chosen over other artists. And I am also interested in your lists, and I hope that you respond with them below in the comments. With that said, let's get to the actual selection of musicians. Number one on here is going to be Errol Garner. He even has an album that's called The Most Happy Piano. It was released in 1956, which was probably around his prime. Uh, the Probably the mid 50s through the early to mid 60s, that kind of 10-year middle period there. Anyways, he plays with this bright, lively, and distinct style. This breathed much unique spirit into the improvisation and embellishment he frequently added to his music. He has a great fusion of bop and stride, amongst other things. The first song that I would probably recommend you check out is Misty from him, or I Can't Give You Anything But Love. Errol Garner, of note, is one of those musicians from his era, kind of like Art Tatum or Frank Sinatra, who did his own takes on the Great American Songbook rather than really writing a bunch of his own music. Number two on this list is going to be the Sonics. If you're a fan of more famous heavy bands like the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, Billy Idol, or Judas Priest, meet their predecessor, I would say. Though they didn't achieve very much longevity or notoriety, they were kind of before their time and in their heaviness. Their music is like an interesting fusion of 60s garage with Chuck Berry and maybe some of the early punk bands that came later that I mentioned before. The first song to start with for them, I would say, would probably be Walking the Dog or maybe Cinderella. You could also try Strychnine, is a great song by them. Their cover of Louie Louie is also fantastic. Uh, Another band that is at number three on here. Sorry if I zoned out there for a second. Another band here at number three on this list is going to be Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. Grab your Teslas and let's go back a ways towards the legends of gypsy jazz. A lot of this music is upbeat and it's pretty instrumental. There's not a lot of singing or vocals in any gypsy jazz that I've heard. I haven't actually heard any, I don't think. So if you're depressed, this is good background music probably. It doesn't take up all of your attention and overwhelm things like music with many more things going on. One song that I would recommend as a starting place, the first song that I think I heard by Django and Stefan would be Minor Swing. Um, Django Reinhardt only had two fingers, which is an interesting tidbit. So he played with that very bright and upbeat style, which is probably influential to later country music, that kind of single note style, that Ernest Tubbs, guitar player, for example, used. I would say that that kind of he lost his fingers in a car fire, so I would say that this is probably one of the resulting actual things that ended up benefiting him, is that he ended up becoming one of the most influential guitar players of all time by having to readjust to accommodate his, well, I guess you could call it a disability, but it ended up helping him, so it's really not. Yeah, but if I didn't mention it, the first recommended song is Minor Swing. Number four on this list is going to be Ernest Tubb, who I actually mentioned Django having some influence on his guitar player a moment ago. Yeah, uh, Ernest Tubb, despite the time and genre of a 1940s and 50s country singer, Ernest Tubb adds that Dixieland spirit and that kick to his music rather than just going for kind of generic downtrodden ballads about where it all went wrong for some alcoholic whose baby left him, you know? He was also great about giving his other musicians time to play and to jam. You can frequently hear him call out their name. You can hear him yell, "Oh, Jimmy Short" or something like that. Um, yeah, gives them time to solo and to play frequently. Number 5 on here is going to be Fats Waller, the quintessential stride piano spiritual embodiment. I always envision him playing at some smoky bar right around Prohibition. He was one of the earlier people in all of recorded music. You got to go back to like Jelly Roll Morton or something like that to predate Fats Waller. I mean, I guess uh, for really famous people that is. Um, I read that he was actually kidnapped by Al Capone and forced to play his birthday party. He thought they were actually going to kill him, but he ended up partying for a number of days. When I think of someone's smile and all of music, or someone's eyebrows, I guess, Fats Waller is always the first person in my mind and in my heart. He's makes me think of my grandma, in terms of jazz piano. My grandma was in a jazz band. Number 6 on here is going to be Cream. There's an almost incomprehensible level of talent compacted into this supergroup. There's also the relentless energy that Ginger Baker drums into the live performances of the songs, such as Spoonful. I just think that there's just so much talent and energy that I just couldn't avoid putting Cream on here. They really are the cream of the crop, and that all goes without even mentioning the awesome vocals and the guitar of Eric Clapton. And they kicked ass live. Even Cream cover bands that I've heard were pretty awesome too. I wish that they were around longer, kind of like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or Jimi Hendrix. I wish those bands were around longer too. It's kind of that example of a high peak without too much longevity, I suppose. Okay, let's go on to number 7 on here, a more modern artist, which is Billy Strings. Part of a more modern wave, as I said, of what you could call probably all bluegrass. Billy Strings is one of those next level guitar players. He's a virtuoso. He's one of those people who, when you see kind of like Doc Watson or John Fahey, you can just tell you're looking at somebody whose skill level I guess you could say is elevated beyond most musicians that you see on a mundane platform. If you ever see him play live, mark it down because it's practically a spiritual, dare I say, religious experience. He's pretty new, so the only drawback that I would say to him is that he only has like 3 albums, but that's about the only one. Um, Maybe sometimes he jams a bit too long towards the end of his songs, but if you like Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers, then you'll probably love Billy Strings, I would say. Um, Number 8 on this list is going to be the Quicksilver Messenger Service. This is a band that will take you on a journey with one of their old concert tapes, I would say. Check out the Winterland concert they played and the incredible vocals of Dino Valente. The live version of Fresh Air from that show that I just mentioned in '75 is amazing, and it's a great starting place. There's also some pretty quality footage of it too. Um, there were frequent lineup changes in this band, but they were pretty awesome in every form. I would say start with Who Do You Love or Fresh Air if you want to go with the most well known song that they have. Um, Sorry if I've been a little bit zoned out. Number 9 on this list is going to be Leonard Skinner, who I actually felt a little bit surprised that I chose to put on here. There's quite a few reasons, though, why Skynyrd is on here, and no, Freebird isn't the first one of them. Between their fantastic crowd energy and the plethora of great live shows and mind-bending guitar solos that they have, like That Smell, for example, this is a band that was so talented in every virtual corner possible, and they were well-rounded, to say the least. I would start with T for Texas, T for Tennessee, which is, I know, a Jimmy Rogers cover that they did live, um, which is a weird place to start. You could also start, if you want to start with one of their individual songs, with Was I Right or Wrong? Not so much a happy song, but it's a good place to start with Skynyrd, I would suppose. But yeah, I would start with T for Texas if you're looking for something more upbeat, and it's kind of a little bit comparable to, I would say, listening to maybe Greengrass and High Tides or something. If you're listening to one of those extended, lengthy versions of Greengrass and High Tides. Uh, yeah, let's listen to number 10 on the list now, which is going to be Sublime. They're one of the most free-spirited voices in all of music, I would say. One of the most free-spirited voices in all of music. It's got to be Brad, and he was one of the biggest losses of all of the 90s when he died at a young age. He was one of the biggest losses in all of music. Um, he's one of those like 27 club people. I think he might have been 29 or something, but nevertheless, uh, Sublime was one of the most unique and recognizable bands of their entire generation. And I always think of songs like Santeria, Pawn Shop, and Wrong Way. Any of those make great starting places as well. Um, I don't really need to say much about Sublime because I've talked about them many times on this channel, whether I was doing a cover or whether I was talking about them on the top 100 list. Sublime is probably going to be one of the most consistent bands that I actually talk about, let alone one of my most consistent happy bands. But yeah, if I didn't mention it already, these aren't meant to be the most like consistently happy, as in they're 100% of the time happy. You know, I know that certain people, they have their depressing songs. I didn't want to put people like Townes Van Zandt on here. Not that he's not awesome, but I don't want to put songs like Lungs and Nothing and Snake Mountain Blues and shit, and just kind of those ones that'll kind of kill your vibe a little bit. Anyways, yeah, I felt Sublime was one of those bands that you'd want to play at a party or at like a 4th of July barbecue or something. They're one of those bands that kind of embody that free spirit. And yeah, I miss Brad, even though he died when I was like 4 years old. I think Sublime has probably got to be the best band of the 90s. Who else could you choose over them? Maybe Pearl Jam. Of all the bands to debut in the 90s, who would you pick? I have to ask you guys out in the crowd. Who would you pick over Sublime? That's got to be probably the best band of the 90s, aside from them. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry for the lengthy, like week-long absence. I hope that this video is good. Um, yeah, it's nice to be back, and nice to be making videos for you guys. I hope that all of you are having a really great holidays, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Okay, goodbye. Love you guys.